A young nanny finds a lost boy in the park, unaware he was the son of a millionaire CEO. What happens next changes their lives forever. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Emma Foster, 32 years old, often felt her weekends were indistinguishable from one another. On that particular Saturday, she woke early in her modest Brooklyn apartment, a faint sigh escaping her lips as she glanced at the worn-out copy of Little Women resting on her nightstand. She wasn't meeting any client families today, her rare day off from nannying. She hoped for peace, nothing more than an ordinary afternoon spent reading beneath the warm autumn sun in Lakewood Park. Stepping outside, she noticed how the crisp October breeze carried the scent of pumpkin spice and damp leaves, an unmistakably American autumn. The subway ride to Lakewood, a tranquil neighborhood just north of the hustle of Manhattan, gave Emma time to think about how repetitive her life had become. Her reflection stared back from the dark subway window, shoulder-length brown hair, tired brown eyes, and a gentle smile marred by the tiniest hint of lingering sadness. She was proud of her work, but she yearned for something more, a deeper connection to the world, to people. Upon arriving at Lakewood Park, she found her favorite bench under a tall oak tree whose leaves had already begun turning gold and russet. Families meandered about, some parents chasing excited toddlers, others sharing lunch on picnic blankets. Yet, despite the laughter and easy chatter filling the air, Emma felt a strange undercurrent of anticipation, as though the wind itself whispered that something unexpected was about to happen. Settling in with her novel, she flipped through pages describing familial bonds and sacrifices, pausing now and then to sip from a thermos of tea. A few bright orange leaves danced past her feet. It was serene, exactly how she had pictured her day off. She tried to savor that moment, but a gentle ache pressed on her heart. She loved caring for children. It was second nature. But Emma longed for a sense of permanency in her life, something beyond short-term nanny jobs and fleeting connections. Memories flickered through her mind, recalling her last nannying position in an upscale Chicago suburb. The parents were polite but distant, and when they abruptly decided to relocate, Emma had been dismissed with a handshake and a polite smile. She had wondered then, would she ever find a role where she truly belonged, where she mattered not just as an employee, but as a person? Her thoughts drifted, and that was when she heard it, a soft, muffled sob. Squinting toward the row of maples across the narrow walking path, she saw a lone child. He was seated on the edge of a wooden bench, shoulders trembling in quiet distress. Emma's heart clenched involuntarily. She gazed around. Other visitors in the park were preoccupied, chatting, jogging, or immersed in their own worlds. But that little boy sat alone, tears carving silent paths down his cheeks. She looked down at her book and exhaled, hesitation creeping in. Maybe a parent or guardian was nearby. What if she intruded and caused a scene? In her experience, not all families appreciated a stranger's concern, even well-intended. She told herself to stay put, that it wasn't her business. Yet the sight of a child so clearly upset tugged at her conscience. She closed her book, gathering the courage to stand. Her heart fluttered with the old anxieties. She remembered times when her involvement had been misread, times she had been reprimanded for stepping out of line. But could she really walk away from a crying child? Emma rose, pressing her coat closer against the brisk air. Leaves crunched underfoot as she made her way toward him. From a short distance, she noticed the boy's red nose and trembling hands. He couldn't have been older than 9, maybe 10 at most. His simple navy blue t-shirt and well-worn jeans hinted he hadn't come here for any fancy event. Instead, he looked like a child who'd wandered off. Her heart pounded. There was a moment of indecision, an instant where she almost turned around. But she pushed through it. With a gentle voice, she spoke, "Hey there, sweetie, are you all right?" In the boy's eyes, Emma glimpsed raw fear and sadness. She had no idea then that this simple act of kindness, this reflexive choice to comfort a weeping child, would alter the course of her life in ways she never imagined. Emma knelt beside the bench, her gentle expression inviting trust. The boy's sobs turned into shaky breaths as she offered a tissue from her purse. He sniffled, wiping his damp cheeks, but said nothing at first. She introduced herself softly. "I'm Emma. I noticed you were upset. Do you need help?" The boy nodded hesitantly. I can't find my dad. He was supposed to pick me up. I got scared." His voice, barely above a whisper, trembled with each word. Looking around, Emma noticed no adult frantically searching for a missing child. The park's ambient noise, barking dogs, parents calling after toddlers, and the shuffle of joggers provided no indication that anyone was looking for a lost boy. Her heart weighed heavily as she imagined how worried she would be if this were her own child. She drew in a calming breath. "What's your name?" "Liam," he said, tears threatening again. "Dad told me to wait on the playground while he had a quick meeting nearby, but I walked around and I got lost." Her mind raced. Meeting. She glanced at her phone to call the authorities, but the battery icon flashed ominously at just a few percent. For a moment, she considered scolding herself for not charging it fully. Instead, she mustered a reassuring smile. "It's all right, Liam. Let's try to find him together. Okay?" Liam nodded, a glimmer of hope shining through his tears. Emma offered her hand, which he accepted with surprising firmness, as though clutching onto the only security he had at the moment. They made their way past the playground, scanning the crowd for anyone who might be his father. Families were spread out, couples strolled leisurely, and scattered groups chatted beneath the autumn foliage. But no one called out Liam's name. Emma approached a friendly-looking couple who was sitting on a nearby picnic blanket. They shrugged apologetically, not recognizing Liam. Another woman, a jogger taking a water break, said she hadn't seen any frantic parent either. With each inquiry, Liam's grip tightened. Emma did her best to maintain composure, offering words of comfort whenever Liam's eyes misted over again. She could sense his panic rising. "Does your dad have a phone number you remember?" she asked, hoping for a straightforward solution. He shook his head. "I only know how to reach him on speed dial," he replied, voice unsteady. Emma cursed the reliance on modern technology. If Liam had memorized even one phone number, she could have called right away. They walked toward a small information kiosk at the park's entrance, where sometimes park rangers or staff members could assist, but the booth was locked, a notice indicating shorter weekend hours. Emma felt a small prickle of concern. Time was passing, and if no one had appeared yet, perhaps the father couldn't find Liam. Or worse, maybe the father hadn't noticed the time slip away. Should we call the police?" Liam asked, lips quivering. He wore an expression of both fear and reluctant acceptance, as though this step meant the situation was truly dire. Emma hesitated. "We might need to, but let's not worry just yet," she said gently, attempting to shield him from deeper anxiety. "We'll try a bit longer here. Maybe your dad is nearby, looking for you as we speak." They continued searching. At one point, Emma spotted a tall man in a crisp suit, pacing while talking on his phone, but he brushed them off when asked if he was missing a child. It was a stark moment for Emma. She saw how easily children could be overlooked in a busy adult world. For Liam's sake, she tried to smile. "I'll stay with you until we find him. Promise." They settled on a bench near the central pathway where they would be easily visible, hoping the father would emerge from the crowd. As the minutes stretched, Emma felt Liam trembling with uncertainty, almost clinging to her side. She recognized this profound responsibility that had suddenly landed on her shoulders. The wind rustled leaves overhead, an echo of her own swirling thoughts. Should she take him somewhere safer? Was she doing the right thing by waiting out here in public? Yet, looking into Liam's eyes, she couldn't abandon him. Something deeper stirred within her, a reminder of why she'd chosen to be a caregiver in the first place. At that moment, Emma became sure of one thing: she would not leave this child until he was safely back with his father. Emma's heart clenched at the sight of Liam's uncertain gaze. A swirl of questions raced through her mind, none with easy answers. She recalled how, as a professional nanny, she was always warned against overstepping boundaries. The line between concern and interference could be razor thin, yet she couldn't stand by while a frightened child sat alone. Nearby, a group of teenagers laughed loudly, skateboards rattling against the concrete path. Their carefree chatter contrasted starkly with the tense hush lingering between Emma and Liam. She pulled out her phone again, noticing the battery dropping below 5%. If she called the police, would it make Liam even more anxious? It was a tough choice. Liam's face went pale. "I'm scared my dad will be mad," he said, voice trembling. "He's usually busy and hates it when plans don't go right." Emma offered a comforting squeeze on his shoulder. "Accidents happen," she said in a measured tone, though she felt her own pulse quicken. She suspected that if Liam's father was so busy, he might not realize how much time had passed. Or perhaps he was searching frantically somewhere else, equally worried. As the park started to thin out, families heading home for late lunches, Emma scanned the area for anyone resembling Liam. A pang of unease settled in her stomach. "Maybe we should at least alert someone," she murmured, half to herself. Liam's eyes brimmed with tears again. "What if we get in trouble? Maybe my dad will think you took me away." The fear in his voice stung Emma. She had worked with families where her genuine concern had been mistaken for interference, and the memory still caused her cheeks to burn. But leaving him alone would be worse, far worse. She patted the bench, encouraging Liam to sit. "We'll stay right here for a bit longer. If your dad shows up, we'll see him. If not, I'll give the local precinct a quick call, just so they know there's a lost child who needs help." He nodded solemnly, relief and apprehension mingling in his features. Emma felt a wave of empathy for him. Children shouldn't have to bear the weight of adult anxieties and rigid schedules. She remembered her own childhood, less complicated, filled with small joys like running barefoot in the yard. Liam seemed so young to be so afraid of a parent's reaction. Minutes ticked by in tense silence. Occasionally, Emma tried to distract Liam by talking about his interests, but his answers were brief, overshadowed by worry. She learned he was 9 years old, enjoyed reading fantasy books, and liked playing soccer at recess. Yet each time she asked about his father, Liam's responses became guarded. Eventually, Emma mustered the courage to make a short call to the local police station. Her phone battery blinked, threatening to die. She explained the situation as calmly as possible, giving Liam's name and the location. The dispatcher advised her to wait a bit longer unless the child was in immediate danger, mentioning that many lost child reports resolve when parents return. Hanging up, Emma noticed Liam shivering, whether from the crisp breeze or anxiety, she couldn't tell. She slipped off her light cardigan and draped it over his shoulders. "Don't worry," she assured him with a soft smile. "We'll figure this out." He looked up with big, pleading eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Emma was struck by how vulnerable he seemed, yet she admired his bravery in confiding in a stranger. Despite her own swirling dread, what if this went wrong in some terrible way? Emma settled beside him, letting him lean on her arm. The old oak tree overhead cast long, shifting shadows on the ground, as if reflecting the uncertainty that weighed on her mind. She found herself silently praying his father would appear soon. Each passing second magnified her fears. Could she face an enraged parent who might think she'd meddled? Or, worse, could the father be so distant that he hadn't even realized Liam was missing? Emma's thoughts churned with doubt, but one thing stayed resolute in her mind. She would not abandon this boy. Even if fear knocked at her own door, she had no intention of answering it by running away. Just as Emma began to consider taking Liam to the nearest police station, she felt a small tap on her shoulder. It was a young woman walking her golden retriever, eyeing them curiously. "Is everything okay?" the woman asked, glancing at Liam, who was still clutching Emma's cardigan. Emma gave a polite smile, explaining the situation. The woman frowned sympathetically and shook her head. "I haven't seen anyone who looked worried about a missing kid. Hope you find his father soon." Then she continued on, the dog trotting faithfully beside her. Her concern deepening, Emma turned her attention to Liam. "I wonder if your dad got caught up in something. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" Liam shrugged helplessly. "He said he had a meeting in an office near the park, but he didn't say which building. He goes to lots of offices. My dad's always busy." Those last words lingered in the air. Emma couldn't help but reflect on the kind of life Liam must lead, affluent, possibly, but lonely. She had worked for wealthy families before, and too often she'd witnessed children overshadowed by ambitious schedules and obligations. She recalled times when her presence as a nanny felt more like a patch than a permanent fixture. Pride sometimes kept parents from admitting they needed to be more present. A few people in the park shot questioning glances, but no one intervened. Emma sensed judgment in some of those looks. Why was this woman with a boy who clearly wasn't hers? She felt her cheeks flush. She tried to keep her focus on Liam, offering him reassuring words whenever he grew restless. Occasionally, he mentioned little details about his father, how he was really rich and had a giant office. The child spoke these words not with excitement, but with a mix of awe and sadness, like he had accepted wealth as part of his life, but rarely found comfort in it. Emma suspected that Liam's father's pride might be a shield, a reason for letting emotional distance settle in. Emma bought Liam a small cup of hot chocolate from the park's cafe, hoping it might soothe him. He thanked her politely, the warmth of the drink bringing some color back to his cheeks. She sat beside him on a wooden bench, scanning the thinning crowds once again. Late afternoon light streamed through the branches, casting dappled shadows across the pavement. In the back of her mind, Emma remembered her friend Karen's warning about meddling. If Liam's father was as wealthy and powerful as the boy hinted, maybe she was risking accusations of kidnapping or negligence. The thought churned her stomach, yet she felt an unmistakable pull to protect Liam. After half an hour more, the same uncertainty gnawed at her. Should she leave now, take Liam to the station, or keep waiting here in the park in plain sight? She knew that sometimes parents in high-profile positions reacted badly, assuming ill intent. Pride could make them lash out, but Liam was her priority. She crouched down, meeting his gaze. "If we don't see him soon, I'll take you to the police station. They'll help us find your dad." Liam's lower lip quivered. "Okay." He gripped the hot chocolate cup, now half empty, with trembling hands. A light breeze stirred a pile of fallen leaves, swirling them around the bench. Emma spotted a group of onlookers whispering among themselves, and her heart sank. She could almost hear their speculative gossip. Who is this woman with that child? The last thing Liam needed was a public scene. She pressed her lips together, ignoring the tension. Gazing down at Liam's tear-stained face, she felt her instinct to nurture flaring up. Regardless of the father's potential reaction, she wouldn't let the boy face these anxious moments alone. In that passing moment, Emma realized how strongly pride can cast its own shadow, both the father's pride, perhaps preventing him from being more attentive, and her own fear of what others might think. Still, she chose compassion over retreat. If Liam needed her, she would stand by him until the situation was resolved, no matter the consequences. Emma began gathering her courage to call the police again, her phone battery now blinking dangerously at 2%. Before she could dial, a tall figure in a sharply tailored suit emerged from the far edge of the park. He appeared disheveled, his usually immaculate tie loosened around his neck. The moment his eyes landed on Liam, a startling mix of relief and worry washed over his face. "Liam!" The man's voice trembled with urgency as he quickly closed the distance between them. Liam jumped off the bench and ran to him, tears flowing freely. Emma exhaled with profound relief, standing a few steps behind. She noted his features, early 40s, dark hair neatly combed except for a few strands that had escaped in his haste, an imposing posture slightly undone by obvious concern. He knelt to embrace Liam, pulling the boy close. Emma heard him murmur, "I'm so sorry." His voice taut with remorse and fear. Relieved as she was, Emma also braced herself. She wasn't certain how he would react to seeing a stranger with his child. Fiddling with her phone, she watched warily as father and son clung to each other for a tense moment. After ensuring Liam was safe, the man turned his gaze to Emma. Did you find him here? He was lost," he managed, his chest heaving. There was undeniable gratitude in his eyes, but also a sharp edge of anxiety. Emma nodded softly. "Yes, sir. I came across Liam crying on a bench." "We've been searching for you, or someone who knew him, for quite a while." Liam sniffled, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. "Dad, I got scared," he whispered. "I didn't know where you were, and I couldn't remember your cell number." The father rose to his full height, resting a protective hand on Liam's shoulder. For a brief moment, he seemed at a loss for words. He cleared his throat. "My name's Alexander Collins. Thank you. Emma, is it?" He caught her name from Liam, "for taking care of my son." Emma noticed the intensity in his gaze, as though he was accustomed to controlling every situation, but had momentarily lost command. She met that intensity with a composed nod. "I'm glad I could help." Her phone chose that exact moment to let out its final beep before dying. She tucked it into her bag, pushing aside the minor inconvenience. Liam's safety was more important. Alexander ran a hand over Liam's hair. "I left him for a short meeting down the block. It was supposed to be quick, but I got held up by an urgent conference call. By the time I realized I'd lost track of him, he wasn't at the playground." He paused, struggling to maintain composure. I panicked." Emma couldn't help feeling some sympathy. Despite his polished exterior, he looked genuinely shaken. "I understand. Liam and I waited here, hoping you'd come back soon. We considered going to the police, but we stayed in case you showed up." Alexander nodded, relief visible in the faint, unsteady smile that graced his lips. He looked down at Liam and pulled him into another firm hug, murmuring apologies. The boy clung to him, burying his face in Alexander's suit jacket. Passers-by started to notice the scene, some pausing briefly. Sensing the sudden attention, Alexander straightened up. "Thank you, Emma," he said again, quieter this time. A hint of humility cut through his formal manner. "I can't tell you how grateful I am that you stepped in." Emma saw Liam glance at her, his eyes reflecting a genuine fondness. In those few hours, she had become his anchor. She felt a swell of maternal protectiveness, but also a twinge of apprehension. This was someone else's child, after all. Alexander exchanged phone details with her at his request, explaining that he wanted to express his thanks more properly. "You've done more than just find a lost boy," he murmured, his voice laced with unspoken emotion. "I owe you." Emma's cheeks grew warm. She assured him it was no trouble, that she'd merely followed her instincts. But as she watched Liam hold his father's hand, she sensed that a simple thank you might not be the end of this story. Indeed, there was something in Alexander's guarded expression, a faint spark of curiosity, perhaps even respect, that hinted at a path unwinding between them, leading somewhere neither had anticipated. Emma sat at her small kitchen table, nursing a mug of coffee that had long since cooled. Through the window, early morning sunshine highlighted the modest neighborhood outside, a far cry from the spacious apartments and corporate offices she usually glimpsed when babysitting. Thoughts of Liam persisted, though 2 weeks had passed since she'd helped him reunite with Alexander in Lakewood Park. She wondered how they were both doing. At random moments during her day, Emma found herself hoping that Liam felt safe and happy, even if she'd never hear from him again. Then her phone buzzed. Emma nearly spilled her coffee as she saw the caller ID, Alexander Collins. Heart thumping, she accepted the call. His voice, warm yet reserved, came over the line. "Emma, good morning. It's been a while. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." She quickly assured him he wasn't. Something about his tone suggested both hesitation and determination. "I was wondering," he began carefully, "if you'd be open to meeting with me, us, again. Liam misses you. And if it's not an inconvenience, I'd like to discuss a temporary arrangement for you to watch him on a more regular basis." Emma's heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and caution. She tried not to let her voice betray those swirling emotions as she asked for more details. Alexander explained that he had pressing matters in his company. He needed a trustworthy person to supervise Liam after school, at least for a few weeks. "You've made a wonderful impression," he said quietly, as though uncomfortable expressing sincere gratitude. "I'm hoping we can arrange something that suits us both." After agreeing to meet him in person, Emma hung up and let out a slow exhale. That single phone call carried enormous implications. She was used to short-term nanny positions, but this felt different, perhaps because she already had a personal connection with Liam. Yet Emma was painfully aware of how wealthy families sometimes saw childcare providers disposable or easily replaced. Would Alexander be any different? She dialed her friend, Karen Mitchell, seeking the familiar reassurance of her outspoken confidant. Karen, 35, was also a professional caregiver, though she now managed a small daycare in Queens. "Girl, you're telling me the same man who nearly lost his kid in the park is calling to offer you a job?" Karen's voice erupted in teasing laughter. "Must have left quite the impression." Emma rolled her eyes, but a hint of a smile touched her lips. She recounted the conversation, admitting her mixture of curiosity and concern. Karen's tone shifted, becoming more supportive. "You've got a good heart. And from everything you've told me about Liam, he needs someone who cares, maybe more than a typical babysitter. Don't let your fears or old experiences hold you back. Go see what he's offering." Early the next day, Emma made her way across Manhattan, climbing out of the subway into a neighborhood known for its sleek skyscrapers. She approached the Collins Corporation building, an imposing structure of steel and glass. Walking through the grand lobby, she felt momentarily overwhelmed by the echo of polished footsteps and the hum of corporate life. Yet a small spark of determination lit inside her. She was here for Liam's sake, and possibly for her own professional growth. Alexander's assistant showed her to a quiet lounge on a high floor, then disappeared behind sliding doors. Emma caught her reflection in a mirrored column, adjusting the collar of her modest blouse, hoping she looked professional enough. She wasn't here to impress anyone with fashion, but she wanted to convey confidence. Just then, a door opened, and Alexander stepped out with Liam by his side. The boy, wearing a shy grin, ran straight to Emma and wrapped his arms around her. She felt an instant warmth in her chest. Over Liam's shoulder, she noticed Alexander watching them, his expression softening. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Liam settled next to Emma, clutching her hand as though afraid she might slip away. Alexander took a seat across from them. His gaze, still somewhat guarded, nonetheless held a sincerity Emma couldn't ignore. And with that, their tentative new arrangement began. Nerves fluttered in Emma's stomach as she stepped out of the Uber in front of Alexander's building in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Though she'd agreed to consider a part-time nanny position, she hadn't entirely comprehended what that might mean. Gone were her reliable but unspectacular routines of side jobs and free weekends. Now, she was about to walk into a world far beyond her usual sphere. Karen had helped Emma choose an outfit, smart black slacks paired with a simple navy blouse. Nothing ostentatious, just enough to look polished. Before heading inside, she paused on the sidewalk, mentally steeling herself. She caught sight of her reflection in the glossy foyer doors, anxious eyes yet a firm stance. "You've got this," she muttered quietly. The moment she stepped into the marble lobby, she felt the hush of understated opulence. Uniformed staff greeted her politely. The air smelled faintly of fresh lilies arranged in tall vases near the elevator bank. Emma could almost hear her own heartbeat as she took an elevator to Alexander's penthouse. She tried to recall each step Karen had suggested: stand tall, speak confidently, and remember that her skills and experience were valuable, no matter how imposing the client. Upon exiting on the top floor, Emma approached a set of double doors. One of them swung open before she had the chance to knock, revealing a middle-aged woman with neatly pinned grey hair and a crisp uniform. Her scrutinizing gaze took in Emma's appearance from head to toe. "You must be Ms. Foster," the woman said, voice polite but somewhat guarded. "I'm Mrs. Henderson, the house manager. Mr. Collins is waiting for you in the living area." Emma forced a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you. Thank you for letting me in." She followed Mrs. Henderson down a wide corridor, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Expensive artwork adorned the walls. To Emma's relief, she caught a glimpse of Liam bouncing excitedly on the sofa at the far end of a sunlit, spacious room. His face lit up as soon as their eyes met. She couldn't help but smile back, feeling a wave of warmth chase away her jitters. Alexander stood by the large windows, scanning something on his phone. He glanced up when Liam dashed toward Emma, nearly tumbling against her legs. Chuckling softly, she steadied him. Alexander slipped the phone into his pocket and strode over. "Welcome," he greeted, sounding more relaxed than the last time they'd met. "I trust you found the place all right?" Emma nodded. "It's certainly impressive." She cast a discreet look around the penthouse's minimalist decor, high ceilings, and breathtaking city views. Everything felt so pristine, like a gleaming stage set for a lifestyle she'd never imagined. Alexander picked up on her mild astonishment. "Please, make yourself at home. Liam's excited you're here." The boy beamed, tugging Emma's hand. "Come see my room," he urged, nearly pulling her down the hallway. The tour revealed Liam's space, a comfortable bedroom with shelves of books, video games, and sports trophies. His eyes danced as he showed Emma each cherished item. Yet she sensed the room, like the rest of the penthouse, carried an undercurrent of loneliness. It was big, filled with possibilities, but lacked the warmth and casual clutter she associated with a child's domain. Afterward, Mrs. Henderson guided them back to the living room, where tea and fruit were arranged on an elegant table. Alexander motioned for Emma to sit. "I'd like to formalize a schedule," he began carefully. School pickups, after-school activities, and occasional evening care. Liam has been asking for you since that day in the park. He seems calmer when you're around. Emma took a measured breath. I'm willing to help as much as I can, she replied. I do have a part-time job at a community center, but I can adjust my hours. Inside, her heart pounded. She was, in essence, stepping into an entirely new routine, one that might envelop her more than any nanny job had before. Alexander glanced at Liam, who hovered by Emma's chair, beaming. Thank you, he said softly. There was a flicker of relief in his eyes, as though a weight lifted. They spent the next hour discussing logistics, salaries, and boundaries. By the time they shook hands, Emma realized she'd already said goodbye to her old, predictable life, and a spark of anticipation replaced her lingering doubts. Emma arrived at Alexander's penthouse early Monday morning. Golden sunbeams streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing an impressively modern living space. She took in the seamless blend of leather sofas, sleek electronics, and a breathtaking view of Manhattan's skyline. Though she'd visited a few times before, she still felt like she'd stepped onto a different planet, one inhabited by CEOs, power lunches, and private drivers. Liam greeted her with unbridled excitement, bounding over in his socks. I can't wait to show you everything, he said, eyes gleaming. Emma chuckled, allowing him to guide her on a mini-tour that included the penthouse's library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, filled mostly with business texts and biographies. Emma noted a single shelf at child's eye level, stocked with storybooks and a few graphic novels, likely the only attempt to cater to Liam's interests. Dad never uses this room, Liam confessed, tapping a hardcover about corporate finance. He just reads stuff for work. There was an innocence in his tone that made Emma's heart twinge. She recalled how, for children, a parent's presence, physical or emotional, could feel miles away when adult obligations took center stage. Mrs. Henderson interrupted them politely, offering Emma a folder of important contacts, teachers' numbers, the house landline, and even Alexander's assistant's phone. In case you need anything, she said, her voice crisp as always. Emma thanked her, aware of the mild wariness in the older woman's gaze. She recognized that look, protective, cautious. Mrs. Henderson had probably seen nannies come and go. Emma couldn't entirely blame her for the suspicion. She turned back to Liam. Ready for school? She reached for his backpack, decorated with soccer ball patches. He nodded, but his smile dimmed slightly. Dad left really early, he murmured. He said goodbye, but he was on the phone the whole time. Emma offered a sympathetic look. He's dealing with a lot, I guess. Yet she couldn't help but wonder if Alexander's busyness was part of a bigger pattern, one where Liam's emotional needs got overshadowed by corporate demands. The day passed in a whirlwind of new routines. She accompanied Liam to his private school, a stately building where uniform-clad children milled about. After dropping him off, Emma felt an odd sense of displacement, returning to the penthouse alone to reorganize Liam's schedule. She placed his art class forms in a neat stack and made notes about upcoming recitals. Each task underscored her presence in this meticulously curated world, one that operated on polished surfaces and hidden pressures. By late afternoon, Emma was waiting near the school gates, watching uniformed students spill into the courtyard. Liam emerged with a grin. She saw a flicker of relief in his expression as soon as he spotted her. On the drive back, courtesy of the family's driver, Brian Carter, she relaxed into the plush leather seats. Brian, a friendly man in his late 20s, struck up casual conversation. Mr. Collins is a decent boss, he observed, eyes on the road. But he's often swamped. Don't let the fancy job fool you. It can be tough here sometimes. Emma nodded, appreciating the honesty. She sensed a subtle camaraderie, both of them employees in Alexander's orbit, trying to ensure everything ran smoothly. Liam chimed in with commentary about his school day, complaining lightly about math homework and describing a fun recess game. The normality of it all momentarily made Emma forget the penthouse's grandeur. Back home, she guided Liam through his homework in the expansive library, the afternoon sun creating patterns on the hardwood floor. She found him bright and curious, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "I'm glad you're here," he said suddenly, looking up from his worksheet. "I used to get so lonely after school." Emma's chest tightened at his confession. She gave him a comforting smile. "I'm glad too. We'll make sure your afternoons are more fun from now on." In that moment, she sensed a subtle shift, something in the air that made the penthouse feel less like a polished showroom and more like a home. For the first time, she felt she was truly stepping inside Alexander's world, not as a mere observer, but as someone who could bridge the chasm between father and son. The challenge, she guessed, would be finding her place without losing sight of who she was. Emma's days soon fell into a new rhythm. Wake early, arrive at the penthouse, check Liam's daily schedule, then shuttle him between school and assorted activities. Though she tried to maintain order, each new situation tested her resourcefulness. Once, she discovered Liam had a half-finished science project due the next day, hidden under his bed amidst scattered Legos. Another time, she found out he was expected at a piano lesson, 10 minutes before it started, because the time had changed without anyone telling her. Despite these small hurdles, Emma thrived in the role. She was a natural caretaker, empathetic and patient. Liam responded well, often asking her to join him in board games or to chat about school gossip over dinner. She noticed that little by little he grew more relaxed, comfortable enough to confide in her about his day-to-day struggles. He mentioned bullying from older kids at school, stemming mostly from envy of his father's wealth. She listened intently, offering gentle advice and unwavering support. In many ways, Emma found the penthouse more manageable than her previous nanny jobs. At least here, she wasn't juggling multiple kids with different schedules. There was a certain order, tucked under the quiet hum of routine, yet she still sensed underlying tension beneath the gleaming surface. She saw the faint worry in Mrs. Henderson's eyes whenever the phone rang with unknown callers. She heard passing mentions of Alexander dealing with urgent business crises, and though she seldom saw him, each brief interaction was tinged with seriousness. One evening, while Liam practiced his reading in the lavish living room, Emma sat with a planner spread across the glass coffee table, penciling in the next week's schedule. The front door clicked open unexpectedly, and Alexander entered, face drawn with fatigue. At first, he barely acknowledged anyone, lost in thought. Then Liam sprang up, dropping his book to run and greet his father. Alexander mustered a worn smile and patted his son's shoulder. "Hey, bud." "How was school?" He glanced toward Emma, acknowledging her presence with a stiff nod. "Any issues today?" Before Emma could respond, Liam blurted, "Emma helped me finish my science project, and we found a new library near school. It's got a cool reading program. She said I can sign up if you say it's okay." His words spilled out in breathless excitement. Alexander's gaze softened. "That sounds great," he replied. Then, as an afterthought, he addressed Emma. "Thank you for all you're doing." Emma felt a warm flush at his acknowledgement. "Liam's a wonderful kid. I'm just trying to make things run smoothly." He gave a weary nod, heading toward his private study before pausing. "You should take tomorrow evening off if you'd like. Mrs. Henderson can handle dinner. You've worked a lot this week." It came out almost like an order, but Emma sensed it was his way of showing appreciation. She nodded, surprised. After he disappeared behind the study door, Liam looked at her questioningly. "Do you want to leave early tomorrow?" Emma gave a small laugh. "We'll see. I might stay until your bedtime, just to be sure you're set." For the next several days, the pattern continued, with Emma orchestrating much of Liam's daily life. She gradually won over Mrs. Henderson's trust by consulting her on household norms and double-checking Liam's meal preferences. Although the house manager still maintained a formal air, Emma noticed small signs of approval: a gentle nod, a softened glance, or the occasional tip about Alexander's preferences. For Emma, the biggest challenge was striking a balance between being nurturing and overstepping. She couldn't forget past experiences where families viewed her closeness with their children as inappropriate. A whisper of caution lingered in the back of her mind. Not every caretaker remained valued once the immediate crisis was over. But in Liam's earnest smile and Alexander's sporadic thanks, she saw reasons to hope that maybe this time would be different. That sense of hope made Emma willing to navigate the complexity of Alexander's household. Day by day, she adapted, determined to make a genuine difference in Liam's life, all while carefully respecting the boundaries of this new, uncharted professional territory. One Saturday afternoon, Emma found herself lingering in the penthouse library, scanning through a shelf of children's books that looked hardly touched. She was planning new activities for Liam, wanting to spark his enthusiasm beyond the usual video games. The quiet of the penthouse was broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning. Suddenly, there was a soft knock on the open door. She turned to see Mrs. Henderson standing there with a neutral expression. "Emma," the house manager began in a measured tone, "Mr. Collins called. He'll be working through the weekend again, so Liam's schedule is entirely in your hands." A beat passed. Then she added, "If I can help in any way, please let me know." It was a small but meaningful gesture. Emma offered a friendly nod. "Thank you. Actually, I was thinking of taking Liam to the public library close by. I'd love your recommendation on a decent lunch spot afterward, maybe a place that's more local." Mrs. Henderson hesitated, then gave a faint smile. "Well, there's a charming little deli just 2 blocks west. Liam loves their turkey sandwiches. I'll have Brian drive you if you prefer." Emma saw in her eyes the first flicker of real cooperation, a shift from the initial guarded distance. Later that morning, Liam and Emma headed out with Brian Carter, the family's driver. Brian had always easygoing, chatted with Emma about weekend traffic and the best shortcuts in the city. Liam, perched in the back seat, gazed out the window, occasionally commenting on the sights. When Brian dropped them off, Emma thanked him warmly, feeling an emerging camaraderie in this small circle of staff who kept the Collins household afloat. The local library was a modest building with faded posters in the windows announcing community events. Inside, a children's section bustled with families reading or picking out books. Emma guided Liam through the aisles, helping him find adventure novels and a few historical fiction titles. The librarians greeted them warmly, even inviting Liam to join a youth reading club. Emma noted how his eyes lit up at the idea of making new friends. They spent a pleasant hour sampling different books. Liam giggled over a comedic graphic novel, reading aloud panels that made Emma smile. The atmosphere felt refreshingly ordinary, a world away from the penthouse's polished sheen. Here, Liam could simply be a curious 9-year-old exploring stories and interacting with other kids. Emma felt her heart lift at the sight. Afterward, they walked a few blocks to the deli Mrs. Henderson recommended. It was a small place with a chalkboard menu, bustling with lunchtime chatter. Liam, sporting an excited grin, insisted on ordering the biggest turkey sandwich they had. Emma joined him, picking up a tuna melt. Between bites, they talked about the new reading club. "Do you think Dad will let me come every week?" Liam asked, voice uncertain. Emma took a moment to consider. "We can talk to him together. I'm sure he wants you to do things you enjoy." She reached out and ruffled Liam's hair. Inwardly, she hoped Alexander wouldn't dismiss the idea as trivial or time-consuming. As they left the deli, Emma noticed Liam seemed lighter, more carefree. It dawned on her that such small outings, mundane to many families, were rare in his life. And for Emma herself, sharing these experiences was both rewarding and bittersweet, reminding her of the close bonds she'd formed with other children in previous jobs, bonds that had ended when the parents moved or decided her services were no longer required. Back at the penthouse, Liam excitedly recounted their day to Mrs. Henderson, who listened with guarded approval. Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps she wasn't just a nanny in this home. Maybe she was part of something bigger, a supportive network that helped Liam discover new strengths and joys. That evening, after dinner, Brian offered a quick thumbs up to Emma as she passed by, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. In a place where staff seldom displayed casual warmth, it felt like acceptance. Emma realized she wasn't alone in wanting the best for Liam. This newfound sense of belonging, however fragile, gave her confidence that she could face the challenges still to come. It happened during a rare moment when Alexander actually joined Emma and Liam for dinner in the penthouse's formal dining room. Usually, he worked late or ate in his study. On this evening, he arrived home earlier than expected, surprising them both. At first, Emma sensed a pleasant change of pace. Liam's face lit up, thrilled to have his father around for a meal. But the atmosphere soon shifted. They settled around the long mahogany table, an elegant setting that felt almost too grand for everyday use. Liam, excited by the day's events, recounted the library visit, the reading club invitation, and how Emma had helped him with a school assignment. Emma caught Alexander's faint half-smile, but also noticed the tension in his jaw. When Liam mentioned wanting to attend the library club every Wednesday, Alexander pressed his lips together. "We'll see," he replied curtly. "I'd rather you focus on your advanced tutoring sessions." Liam's shoulders sank. "But the tutoring is on Thursdays. This wouldn't interfere, Dad." Alexander tightened his grip on the silverware. Emma recognized the telltale signs of building stress. "I have to verify your schedule," he said, tone sharp. "I don't want you wasting time on things that won't help you in the future." A hush fell. Emma's protective instincts flared, but she reminded herself to tread carefully. After a few tense moments, she gently spoke up. "I think the reading club could be beneficial. Liam would interact with peers and improve his reading comprehension. It might also help him feel more confident at school." Alexander's gaze flicked toward her, cool and appraising. "I appreciate your input, Emma," he said, voice measured, "but I'll decide what's best for my son." The finality in his words reverberated. Liam shrank back, focusing on his plate. Emma felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't intended to overstep, but her heart ached for Liam. She sensed the rigidity in Alexander's stance came from a place of worry, maybe about academic success or about controlling the environment around Liam. Clearing her throat, she attempted a calmer approach. "Of course, I respect that. It's just, he's already excelling in his tutoring. Social activities can be just as important." Alexander's expression hardened. "Thank you," he repeated, tone dismissive. "Now, can we drop the subject?" An awkward silence settled, broken only by the clink of forks against plates. Emma's stomach twisted in anxiety. She stole a glance at Liam, who looked like he might cry. Usually, she would comfort him, but Alexander's presence made her hesitate. After dinner, Alexander excused himself abruptly, leaving Emma and Liam alone at the table. She reached over, gently resting a hand on Liam's arm. "I'm sorry if that didn't go the way you hoped," she said softly. He sniffled, nodding in silence. A few minutes later, Emma heard the low murmur of voices coming from Alexander's study. She edged closer to the slightly open door, listening to him speak in clipped tones on the phone. something about a crucial business negotiation. She couldn't catch every word, but it was evident the man was under significant pressure. No wonder he'd been short-tempered at dinner. Emma debated whether to knock, but decided against it. She retreated to the living room where Liam waited, curled up on the sofa. "Dad's mad at me," he mumbled. "He only thinks about business. He probably won't let me do anything fun." Emma drew a slow breath, carefully choosing her words. "I don't think he's mad at you. He's just dealing with a lot. Adults can be complicated." Liam didn't respond, just looked down. Emma pulled him close in a side hug. She wasn't sure how to fix this, but she knew she had to stand by him. This moment was a clear reminder that as much as she tried to smooth Liam's path, there would be obstacles, particularly if Alexander felt threatened or overwhelmed by her suggestions. In that quiet, tense evening, Emma understood that navigating the father's pride and the boy's needs would be a delicate dance. She could offer ideas and encouragement, but ultimately, Alexander's authority was law in this household. This was her first real hurdle, and it left a lingering question. How far should she go in defending Liam's emotional well-being without risking her job or alienating his father completely? The following week saw Emma juggling one small crisis after another. It began early Monday morning when Liam misplaced his homework folder under a stack of magazines in the living room. By the time she found it, mere minutes before they had to leave for school, Liam was in tears, convinced his teacher would mark him down for being unprepared. Emma calmly reassured him, guiding him to take deep breaths and reminding him that mistakes happen. They dashed out the door, hearts pounding but folders secured, narrowly averting a meltdown. This flurry of minor mishaps only seemed to intensify. One afternoon, Emma discovered an abrupt change in Liam's soccer practice schedule. The coach had emailed Alexander, who either hadn't noticed or had neglected to inform anyone. Arriving at the field an hour late, Emma found an exasperated coach, arms folded, shaking his head at their tardiness. While Liam changed into his gear, Emma apologized profusely. She felt the pang of responsibility, even though she could hardly be blamed for a message never forwarded. In the evenings, she sensed a subtle shift at the penthouse. Mrs. Henderson, though still reserved, softened as she witnessed Emma's dedication. Her once stern glances became occasional nods of approval. Brian, the driver, provided quick updates when Alexander left messages about scheduling. Bit by bit, Emma realized she had become the linchpin of Liam's day-to-day life, ironing out forgotten tasks, bridging communication gaps, and offering the nurturing oversight that had been lacking. Yet all these pressures weighed on her. She was determined not to crack under the strain. She told herself it was exactly why Alexander had hired her, to manage these everyday challenges so Liam wouldn't suffer from his father's hectic workload. But whenever a problem cropped up, like a call from the school about Liam's struggling grades in math or a last-minute change in his after-school club, Emma felt the prickly stab of anxiety. Was she truly qualified to hold everything together in a high-pressure household? One particular afternoon, Liam's school counselor requested a meeting to discuss his recent emotional ups and downs. Emma arrived at the office, not entirely sure if Alexander knew about the appointment. The counselor, a warm woman in her 50s, explained that while Liam was bright and generally well-behaved, he often seemed lonely. "He talks about his dad a lot," she mentioned sympathetically. "He speaks highly of you, though. Says you're the one who always listens." Emma blinked back a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "I try my best," she replied softly, aware of how crucial her role had become for Liam. The counselor encouraged continued support and open dialogue, hinting that some of Liam's anxiety might stem from the constant flux of his father's schedule. It was a sensitive topic, one Emma could only partially influence. That night, she attempted to share the counselor's observations with Alexander. He had come home late, tension radiating from him like a force field. She waited until he'd shed his jacket and tie, then calmly began, "I spoke with Liam's school counselor today. She had some concerns." Alexander sighed heavily, cutting her off. "Emma, I've just wrapped up a grueling day. I can't tackle more issues now." His tone was curt, frustration lacing the words. "Let's talk tomorrow." A wave of disappointment rolled through her, but she swallowed it. She knew from experience that pushing him further tonight would be futile. "Of course," she managed, forcing a polite smile. In the quiet that followed, Emma realized she was undergoing her own tests of endurance, constantly navigating schedules and personalities, trying to maintain a peaceful environment for Liam. There were triumphs, like seeing him smile brightly after a good day at school, but also moments of acute stress. Still, when Liam poked his head out of his bedroom that evening to say goodnight, she felt a swell of resolve. His small act of trust, calling her in for one last reassuring hug, confirmed her purpose. Life here might be chaotic, but if she could shoulder the demands, Liam stood to benefit. Emma felt, deep down, that this was a test worth taking. Despite the exhaustion nipping at her edges, she resolved to meet these daily challenges head-on, determined to protect Liam's fragile progress and keep him buoyed by hope. On chilly Saturday morning, Emma woke earlier than usual, haunted by memories of a previous job that had ended poorly. She'd worked for a prominent family in Chicago, 2 busy parents, a modern home, and 3 children. At first, things had gone smoothly. She'd formed a close bond with the kids, only for the parents to abruptly decide they wanted a fresh start and no longer required her. The dismissal was polite but final, leaving Emma feeling discarded. These memories resurfaced as she tidied Liam's room, reorganizing books on his shelves. At the bottom of a neat stack, she found an old photo of Liam, younger and missing a front tooth, standing beside a woman who looked vaguely similar to him. Blue eyes, light brown hair, a mother figure, perhaps. Emma hesitated. She knew better than to pry into personal family affairs, but curiosity tugged at her. Liam never mentioned his mother. That afternoon, Emma confided in Karen during a rare phone call. Karen, always forthright, listened and gently asked, "And how are you holding up, Em? Are you worried Alexander might let you go suddenly, like before?" Emma sighed, admitting she couldn't shake the fear. She cared deeply for Liam, but experience warned that nannies could be replaced on a whim. "I just don't want to get attached only to be thrown away again," she said softly. Karen's voice was firm. "Don't let your past define this job. You're stronger now, Emma. If you hold back, Liam might sense that distance. He needs you fully present." Emma knew she was right, but letting go of the fear was easier said than done. Later that day, Emma was in the kitchen trying a new recipe for Liam, homemade chicken tenders, when Mrs. Henderson stepped in to fetch something from the fridge. The older woman paused, glancing at Emma with a discerning eye. "I couldn't help noticing you seemed unsettled this morning. Is everything all right?" Emma swallowed her surprise at Mrs. Henderson's concern. She decided to be honest. "To an extent, I'm fine, really. Just old job memories. I guess I'm worried if I get too close, it'll hurt when it ends." She avoided mentioning personal details, but her tone carried a weight she couldn't hide. Mrs. Henderson, pressing her lips together, took a moment before replying, "I've seen many nannies come and go in Mr. Cullen's employ. Most didn't last very long, some by their choice, some not. But I've also never seen Liam this content, or Mr. Collins as agreeable to a caregiver. Perhaps that tells you something." Then she turned to leave. The few words, however curtly delivered, felt like a small gift of encouragement. That evening, After a day of chores and an outing to the park, Liam flopped onto the couch beside Emma, complaining of a sore ankle from soccer. As she carefully examined the mild sprain, Liam talked about how his father had once shown up to watch him play a championship match, only to leave abruptly for an urgent business call. "I thought he'd be proud if I scored," Liam confessed, staring at the floor. Emma finished wrapping an ice pack around his ankle, suppressing a pang of sympathy. "I'm sure he was proud," she said gently. "He just has trouble showing it sometimes." She recognized the irony in her words. Alexander's emotional distance was, in its own way, as painful as Emma's fear of being hurt. When Liam retreated to his room for the night, Emma was left alone in the hush of the penthouse. She found herself wandering to the library, absent-mindedly running her fingers along the spines of imposing business texts. Her own shadow stretched on the polished floor, reminding her of how overshadowed she sometimes felt in Alexander's presence. She let out a slow breath. Her past experiences hovered at the fringes of her mind, threatening to taint this newfound connection with Liam. Yet she also realized how far she'd come. She was no longer the timid nanny who automatically believed she was expendable. She had grown in confidence, forging new bonds and routines here. Maybe the shadows of her past couldn't fully disappear, but Emma vowed not to let them dictate the present. She would stand steadfast for Liam's sake, determined to honor the trust he placed in her. It all came crashing down one unseasonably warm Friday when Emma noticed something was off the moment she stepped into the penthouse. Instead of the usual hum of quiet order, frantic energy suffused every room. Phones rang incessantly, staff members scurried around with furrowed brows, and Mrs. Henderson wore an expression that suggested a crisis was brewing. Emma quietly asked, "Is everything all right?" Mrs. Henderson shook her head gravely. "Mr. Collins's company is facing a serious financial setback, something about a major investor backing out." Her eyes flicked toward Alexander's closed study door. "He's been locked in calls since 5 this morning." Emma swallowed hard. She'd known, from snatches of conversation, that Alexander's business was going through a tense period. But the level of panic swirling around the penthouse was alarming. Liam, picking up on the tension, refused to leave his room. Emma found him perched on the edge of his bed, hugging a pillow. "Is Dad mad at me?" he whispered anxiously, eyes brimming with tears. Emma's heart broke at the child's question. "Sweetie, no," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "He's dealing with business issues. It's nothing to do with you." She gently squeezed his hand. "Let's get you ready for school, okay? I'll talk to him and see if he wants to say goodbye before we go." Liam nodded, but his face remained pale. Emma led him to the hallway, hoping Alexander might emerge. Instead, she heard raised voices through the study door, Alexander's clipped tone, underscored by exasperation, and another voice on speakerphone. Not wanting Liam to witness that, Emma gently guided him away. They left for school without a word from his father. The rest of the day spiraled. At noon, Emma received an urgent text from a staff member. Alexander had stormed out for a critical meeting. By mid-afternoon, she got another text that he'd cancelled it, apparently too angry or frustrated to proceed. Meanwhile, Liam called from school, complaining of a headache, convinced his father's problems were his fault somehow. Emma managed to calm him, reminding him that grown-ups handle complicated matters and that he was loved no matter what. Returning to the penthouse for dinner, Emma found the mood even more strained. Staff avoided eye contact as though bracing for an outburst. Liam lingered by the living room window, glancing anxiously over the city lights. "He's not coming home, is he?" he asked, voice trembling. Emma pulled him into a hug. "He'll come back, honey. He's just sorting out some things." Inside, though, she was worried. She'd never seen such desperation in a household before. Wealth and power didn't shield them from the fear of financial collapse. Late that evening, Alexander finally returned. Emma was helping Liam with a puzzle on the coffee table when the front door swung open. He stepped inside, hair slightly disheveled, tie yanked loose. Emma felt the tension radiating from him. For an instant, she hoped he'd greet Liam kindly, maybe ease the boy's fears. But Alexander strode past them without a word, heading directly to his study. Emma bit her lip, sensing how each passing moment chipped away at Liam's confidence. Summoning her courage, she left Liam with the puzzle and tapped lightly on the study door. When no response came, she opened it a crack. "Mr. Collins," she began softly, heart thudding. "Liam's been worried." He stood by his desk, hands braced on the wood, gazing at a barrage of papers, red numbers, negative projections, stress lines carved into his features. "I can't do this," he muttered, eyes flitting to Emma. "Everything's crumbling and it's my responsibility. Do you understand what that's like?" Emma stepped inside, her tone gentle. "I'm not sure I can comprehend fully, but I see Liam is afraid, thinking you're upset at him." She paused. "He needs a moment with you." Alexander's eyes flashed, a mix of frustration and guilt. "I can't be a father right now," he burst out, voice cracking. "Not when my company's on the verge of collapse." The words stung Emma, but she held her ground. "I know it's tough. I just wanted you to know how worried he is." Alexander looked away, jaw clenched. "I'll talk to him later." His focus fell back on the documents. Realizing she'd hit a wall, Emma backed out quietly, feeling the weight of a mountain of problems pressing down on both father and son. In that moment, she vowed to protect Liam from the emotional fallout, even if Alexander himself was too consumed by crisis to see the child's pain. Days rolled by in a blur of tense phone calls and late-night pacing. Emma tiptoed around the penthouse, ensuring Liam's routine stayed intact while Alexander wrestled with looming financial disaster. The friction sparked at the most unexpected moments, like when Liam spilled juice on one of Alexander's business reports. Alexander's sharp reprimand left the boy trembling. Emma confronted him afterward, voice shaky but resolute, insisting he calm down for Liam's sake. He'd stared at her, anger flaring, but said nothing, and stormed away. Despite the chill in the air, Emma found small ways to ease the strain. She enlisted the help of Brian, the driver, to orchestrate a surprise father-son outing. "Just a simple walk in Central Park," she pitched, hopeful. "Even 30 minutes of fresh air might help them reconnect," Brian agreed, offering to subtly suggest to Alexander that a quick break could clear his head. Emma crossed her fingers, hoping it would work. Liam, meanwhile, clung to her support. The boy was quieter than usual, often anxious about his dad's mood swings. "Is he gonna lose his job?" he asked one afternoon, voice shaky. Emma knelt down, cupping his face gently. "Your dad is the boss," she said, trying for a reassuring tone. "But even bosses have to deal with big problems. He's not angry at you, Liam. He's upset at the situation. We're all trying to help." To her surprise, the plan for a park outing gained traction. One Wednesday, Alexander emerged from his study, looking exhausted but resolute, telling Liam they'd go for a short walk if the weather held. Liam's face lit up like Christmas lights. Emma watched the exchange from the kitchen doorway, feeling equal parts relief and skepticism. Would Alexander actually follow through? The next afternoon, Brian drove them to Central Park. The sky was overcast, the threat of rain palpable. As Emma trailed behind father and son, she noticed how Liam stuck close to Alexander's side, glancing up every few steps to see if his dad would speak. Alexander seemed distant, weighed down by stress. Still, he hadn't backed out. That alone felt like a small victory. Emma had arranged a discreet picnic on a bench near the lake. When they arrived, Liam let out an excited exclamation at the sight of the sandwiches and juice boxes. Alexander paused, scanning the modest setup, then gave a reluctant nod of approval. They settled, eating mostly in silence. About 10 minutes in, Liam tried to describe a funny story from school, a friend who wore mismatched socks all week. Alexander listened with half an ear, occasionally glancing at his phone. Emma's heart clenched, but she stayed patient. Sometimes, just sharing a quiet moment could be enough. Suddenly, light drops of rain began to fall. Emma shrugged it off, thinking they'd just pack up and run to the car, but an unexpected moment of grace occurred. Liam giggled, hopping out from under the bench's small overhang, letting raindrops splash his hair and shoulders. When Emma urged him to come back, he laughed harder. "It's not cold, it's just water." Alexander watched, something shifting in his expression. Slowly, he set down his phone and stepped out into the drizzle, calling Liam's name. The boy froze, unsure if he was about to be scolded. Instead, Alexander gently tugged him close, ruffling his damp hair. "You're getting soaked, buddy," he said, voice softer than Emma had heard in weeks. "Let's get back." For that fleeting moment, Emma witnessed a father rediscovering a spark of affection for his child. She felt her throat tighten with emotion. Alexander glanced over at her, and their eyes locked. She offered a small, encouraging smile, and he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her role in orchestrating this break from the chaos. They hurried to the car, drenched but oddly revitalized. Liam chatted excitedly about the rain, while Alexander listened, a thoughtful crease on his brow. Sitting in the back seat, Emma glanced at them both, a spark of hope flickering. This was hardly a grand transformation. Financial turmoil still loomed, and Alexander's stress wouldn't vanish overnight. But in that rainy walk, she caught a glimpse of courage, the father's willingness to set aside his burdens, if only for a moment, to be present with his son. It was a small step, but perhaps the first real one toward healing the rift in their home. In the days following the Central Park outing, the tension in the penthouse lessened slightly. Alexander still wrestled with mounting business problems, but Emma sensed that brief moment in the rain had shifted something. He began stopping by the kitchen for coffee in the mornings, exchanging a few words with Liam before diving into his day. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it felt like a door cracked open. Meanwhile, rumors of a major board meeting circulated among the staff. Emma overheard Brian and Mrs. Henderson discussing it in hushed tones near the elevator. "This is it," Brian remarked one evening, eyebrows drawn. "If Mr. Collins can't secure new investors, the company might lose a massive chunk of its value." Emma tried not to eavesdrop, but worry gnawed at her. She had already seen the effect of Alexander's stress on Liam. If the situation worsened, the emotional fallout could be devastating. She noticed new lines etched into Alexander's face, the phone calls that carried on late into the night, the silent brooding that sometimes followed him like a shadow. Liam, sensing the undercurrent, expressed his own anxieties more openly. "What if we have to move away?" he asked Emma, wide-eyed, after overhearing a fragment of conversation about possible layoffs. Emma tried to reassure him, telling him that sometimes grown-ups speak in worst-case scenarios that never come to pass. In truth, she didn't know the outcome, but she refused to add to his fear. One night, Alexander emerged from his study looking as though he hadn't slept. Emma was tucking Liam into bed when he appeared in the doorway. Startled, Emma almost apologized for still being there, but his expression was gentle, exhausted, but not cold. "Is he ready to sleep?" he asked softly, stepping inside. Liam blinked, surprised to see his father. "Dad," he murmured. Alexander nodded, ruffling Liam's hair. "I wanted to say good night." It was a simple moment, but Emma felt her heart constrict. Liam's eyes shone with relief, a small grin forming at the corners of his mouth. Afterward, Alexander asked Emma to join him in the living room. The tall windows revealed a sparkling city skyline against an inky backdrop. He sank onto the sofa, shoulders slumped. Emma sat tentatively at the opposite end, waiting. He rubbed his temple, words faltering at first. "I know I've been difficult," he admitted, voice low. "This business crisis, there's a board meeting soon, and if I can't pull in the right deals, everything I've built is at risk. I might have to sell off parts of the company or restructure, and I've never felt so powerless." Emma listened carefully. She could sense the fear behind his polished exterior. "It sounds terrifying," she acknowledged softly, "but you're not alone. Liam loves you and he's worried. Maybe letting him see you fight for this while still caring for him could help both of you." His gaze flicked toward her, a mixture of fatigue and gratitude. "I'm not used to leaning on anyone," he confessed. "Trusting people got me burned in the past, but you've shown genuine concern for Liam, and I see how he's happier since you arrived." A ripple of warmth washed through Emma. She recalled Karen's advice. Sometimes simply being present made a difference. "I'm here for Liam," she said gently, "and if there's anything I can do to help you too, well, you only need to ask." She didn't say more. It wasn't her place to meddle in corporate matters, but she could offer empathy. He exhaled, a heavy sound that echoed the weight of months of stress. "Thank you," he murmured, almost as an afterthought, but Emma felt it carried real sincerity. The next morning, the household buzzed with preparations for the upcoming board meeting. Suits were pressed, laptops charged, phone lines tested. Liam had school, but he wore a worried look at breakfast. Emma gave him a reassuring nod, promising to update him once he got home. As Alexander left, armed with a leather briefcase, he paused briefly by Liam's seat at the dining table, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Wish me luck," he said, managing a tight smile. Liam nodded eagerly. For an instant, Emma glimpsed a father and son stepping onto the path toward a big battle, together rather than apart. Though the crisis still loomed large, a subtle undercurrent of unity now pulsed through the penthouse. Emma sensed the stakes were about to escalate. Yet, as she ushered Liam off to school, she felt a guarded optimism. Sometimes, facing the most daunting challenge could bring out the best in people, if they found the courage to stand side by side. Emma didn't have to ask how the board meeting went. She sensed the outcome from the moment she entered the penthouse. Every staff member walked on eggshells, speaking in hushed tones, glancing anxiously at Alexander's closed study door. Even the air felt thicker, weighted by tension that had rapidly suffused the elegant halls. A swirl of papers fluttered on a side table, clues of a storm that had just passed. "Is Dad home?" Liam asked, looking at Emma with worried eyes. The boy had grown noticeably quieter after school, suspecting something was amiss. Emma gently rested her hand on his shoulder, guiding him toward the kitchen. "He's in his study," she replied softly. "Let's give him a bit of space." Mrs. Henderson hovered nearby, lips pressed together. "He came in about an hour ago, didn't say a word," she murmured. "From what I overheard, the meeting didn't go as hoped." Emma swallowed a surge of worry and took Liam to the kitchen for a snack, trying to preserve a semblance of normalcy. But as they settled at the table, carrots and dip untouched, an outburst erupted from down the hall, the sound of raised voices, a loud thud as if something had been knocked over. Liam jumped in his seat, eyes wide with alarm. Without hesitation, Emma left Liam in Mrs. Henderson's care and hurried to the study. She paused at the threshold, heart pounding. Through the slightly open door, she saw Alexander pacing, phone pressed to his ear, his face contorted with frustration. A shattered coffee mug lay on the floor, remnants of dark liquid pooling on the plush rug. "Damn it, Matthew!" he barked, presumably at his business partner or a board member. "You've left me with no choice!" His voice cracked on the last word. Emma realized she was witnessing a man at his breaking point, someone who'd kept control of every situation until now. Even from a distance, she could see how his shoulders trembled with anger and despair. She hesitated, then lightly knocked. "Mr. Collins," she ventured, her voice nearly lost in the charged air. Alexander spun, phone still clutched in his hand. For a moment, she wasn't sure if he would lash out at her. But the wildness in his expression receded slightly, replaced by a flicker of shame. Snapping the phone off, he raked a hand through his hair. "Emma," he said, exhaling a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." His gaze flickered to the broken mug, then away, as if he couldn't fully acknowledge what he'd done. Emma gently closed the door behind her, stepping into the chaos. "You're under a lot of stress," she said, carefully picking up pieces of the ceramic mug. But Liam's worried. He heard the shouting. Alexander winced. "The entire board is bailing. My partner blindsided me with new demands. Investors are backing out. I'm on the verge of losing the company." His tone dripped with bitterness, but she could also hear his desperation. Pressing her lips together, Emma placed the broken shards on a side table, then met his gaze. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I know this must feel impossible, but you're not facing it alone if you let yourself ask for help." Her voice trembled slightly as she recalled her own repeated fear of being cast aside. Yet, looking at Alexander, she saw a man grappling with that very terror of losing everything he'd built, standing on the brink of collapse. He sank into the leather armchair behind his desk. "I can't let Liam see me like this," he muttered, voice rough. "I'm supposed to be the one protecting him." Emma approached quietly, keeping a respectful distance. "You still can. Even in the hardest moments, he needs to feel you're there." She inhaled a slow breath, mindful of crossing lines. "Maybe now's the time to lean on people who care about you. And I promise Liam wants nothing more than to help, in his own small way." Alexander's gaze shifted to a framed photograph on his desk, Liam at a younger age, grinning. The man's eyes reflected a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. "I'm afraid," he admitted in a near whisper, "if I lose the company, will everything else unravel?" Emma crouched, picking up the last shard of porcelain near his feet. "It doesn't have to," she said gently. "Family is more resilient than business deals. I think Liam would trade every bit of your success just to know you're by his side." Alexander swallowed hard, giving a minuscule nod. Emma straightened, stepping back toward the door. In the hush that followed, she saw Alexander's composure teetering at a precipice. Nonetheless, the mere acknowledgement of his fear felt like the first step toward healing. And in that poignant hush, she recognized that even in the eye of the fiercest storm, the love of a child could guide a person back to solid ground, if they allowed it. The next morning, Emma found herself alone in the kitchen before sunrise, stirring a pot of oatmeal while her thoughts churned. She replayed Alexander's admission from the previous night, his blunt, raw fear of losing control. In her past nanny jobs, she'd rarely seen employers so vulnerable, yet his guarded nature had cracked, revealing that beneath the outward success and wealth lay a man grappling with isolation. Mrs. Henderson stepped into the kitchen, her usually stern face drawn with concern. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, noting Emma's dark circles. Emma shook her head, admitting she'd stayed awake half the night, worried about Liam, and Alexander too. As if on cue, Liam shuffled in, hugging a stuffed soccer ball pillow he sometimes carried around when upset. "Dad left early again," he said with a downcast expression. "I barely saw him." Emma offered him a bowl of oatmeal, wishing she could conjure Alexander out of thin air. But she knew he was likely at the office, battling financial fires before they spread any further. Trying to reassure Liam, Emma said gently, "He's doing this for you. He wants to protect everything you have." She kept her doubts to herself. Pride was driving Alexander to fix the crisis alone, refusing any sign of weakness. But that same pride was also pushing him away from the people who mattered. Mid-morning found Emma tidying the living area when she spotted a stack of business magazines on the coffee table. One headline jumped out, "Collins Corporation on the brink." A pang twisted in her stomach. The media was circling like vultures. No wonder Alexander was spiraling under the pressure. That afternoon she took Liam to the library reading club he'd been so excited about. Despite Alexander's earlier reluctance, he'd begrudgingly allowed Emma to bring him. It gave Liam a break from the suffocating atmosphere at home, letting him read and laugh with other children. Emma watched from the sidelines, heart warming each time Liam cracked a small, genuine smile. Afterward, they stopped by a nearby diner for sandwiches. Over the clinking of silverware, Liam spoke up, voice trembling. "I miss Dad. Even when he's home, it's like he's not really there." Emma reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "I know," she murmured. "He's fighting a big battle. But he cares about you, Liam, more than any company." Liam's eyes glistened. "Then why does he push me away? I try not to bother him, but maybe if I were smarter or better at helping, he'd want me around." The raw innocence of Liam's words cut Emma deeply. "You are everything you need to be," she reassured, voice thick with emotion. "Your dad's pride makes him think he has to handle everything himself. It's got nothing to do with you." Arriving back at the penthouse, Emma found Alexander in the living room, a rare sight. He stood by the window, phone in hand, staring out at the late afternoon sky. Liam froze, uncertain whether to approach. Emma gave him a light nudge. Slowly, the boy walked over, clearing his throat. "Dad, I had fun at the reading club," he offered tentatively. Alexander turned, eyes heavy with fatigue. For a moment, Emma expected him to brush Liam off. Instead, he set his phone aside, nodding. "That's good," he said, voice subdued. Emboldened, Liam added, "I missed you today." It was a simple, honest statement, but it hung in the air like a question. Would his father acknowledge it? A flicker of regret passed over Alexander's features. "I'm sorry," he managed. "Work has been complicated." Emma could sense the strain in his words, as though pride battled with guilt. Yet Liam's directness disarmed him in a way Emma never could. She quietly excused herself, letting father and son share a moment. From the hallway, she heard snippets of conversation, Alexander promising to spend time with Liam on the weekend if the crisis abated. The "if" loomed large, but it was still a promise. Emma realized that in all his success, Alexander had paid a hefty price. Pride might have helped him build a business empire, but it was chipping away at his most precious bond. The question was whether he'd see the real cost before it was too late. 2 days later, Emma found herself carrying a tray of tea into Alexander's study, cautious not to intrude. The door was slightly ajar, revealing him hunched over stacks of paperwork. His posture screamed defeat, yet he continued plowing through documents as though perseverance alone could solve his dilemmas. He glanced up when Emma knocked softly, an unspoken question in his eyes. "You should take a break," she said gently, setting the tea on a corner of his desk. "I can see how exhausted you are." Alexander's initial response was a dismissive grunt, as though acknowledging the truth, but refusing to slow down. Still, he cradled the teacup, inhaling the soothing aroma. "Thank you," he said, voice subdued. "I guess I do need a moment." Emma noticed the lines of strain on his face. "I know I'm not a business guru," she began, trying for a light tone. "But maybe stepping back could help you see the bigger picture. Sometimes fresh eyes reveal solutions we can't see when we're buried under stress." He paused, letting her words hang. Then, almost surprising himself, he nodded. "I've been so close to these problems that I might be missing simpler answers." He exhaled, a ragged sound. "I can't recall the last time I allowed myself to think outside the immediate crisis." Emma fiddled with the hem of her sweater, contemplating whether to push further. But the sincerity in his gaze encouraged her. "You built this company on your own terms, right? Maybe you can reinvent it in a new way, sell certain assets, pivot in a different direction. You'd still be leading, just differently." His eyebrows arched. "I'm not used to hearing such straightforward advice in this house," he said, a faint note of wry humor coloring his voice. "Most people tiptoe around me, or they tell me what they think I want to hear. You're telling me to adapt." Emma gave a small shrug. "Adaptation is part of survival." "It's the same with Liam. He's adapting to your schedule, your stress. Maybe you can adapt for him too." Her words lingered like a gentle echo in the study. Alexander, for once, didn't dismiss them. Instead, he studied Emma's face, searching for any sign of hidden motive. Finding none, he set the teacup down, a more contemplative expression taking shape. "You speak like someone who's learned the hard way," he observed quietly. A brief flicker of pain crossed Emma's eyes. "I've had my share of sudden changes," she admitted, recalling lost jobs, abrupt moves, and her perpetual fear of being cast aside. "But each time, I realized that letting go of what wasn't working opened space for something that did." Alexander leaned back, arms folded, his gaze drifting to the window where the city skyline gleamed under the midday sun. "I keep thinking about losing everything," he murmured. "But what if it's not about losing? Maybe it's about redefining success." He rubbed his forehead, as if grappling with a new concept. "I've been so focused on protecting my assets, I haven't thought about protecting Liam's peace of mind. Or my own, for that matter." Emma's chest tightened with empathy. "Liam adores you," she said. "He just needs you to be present. No matter what happens with the company, he'll be okay if he has you." Alexander's mouth curved into a faint, sad smile. "Thank you for reminding me." He glanced at a family photo on the wall, himself with Liam in a younger, happier moment. "It might be time I start listening to people who actually have my best interests at heart." Emma sensed a shift in him, a softening that hinted at a willingness to approach problems differently. "Sometimes an outsider's perspective helps," she said, offering a supportive look. "And if you need more time for Liam's sake, Brian and I can handle the day-to-day schedule. Take a walk, clear your head, might do wonders." He nodded, standing up with a renewed glint in his eye. "You know," he ventured, voice subdued, "it might. I'll let you handle the home front. I'll step out for a while. No phone calls, no spreadsheets, just to see if my mind can reset." Emma smiled warmly as he moved around the desk. For the first time in days, Alexander looked like a man carrying a fraction less burden on his shoulders. It wasn't a magic fix. The crisis still loomed, but a new perspective had taken root. Sometimes that was enough to spark real change. That evening, Emma felt the atmosphere in the penthouse grow noticeably lighter. While Alexander hadn't yet shared any miraculous business breakthrough, he'd taken that walk, returned calmer, and even spent time helping Liam organize a stack of school papers. Emma watched from the kitchen doorway, quietly amazed as father and son laughed over a doodle Liam had scribbled on his math homework. After Liam went to bed, Alexander lingered in the living room. Emma found him examining the shelves of books, a thoughtful expression on his face. He offered her a seat, gesturing for her to join him on one of the sleek leather sofas. She accepted, keeping a respectful distance, but feeling the intangible gap between them slowly shrink. "I was on the phone with potential investors earlier tonight," he said, voice measured. "I'm selling a portion of the company, not enough to lose it entirely, but enough to salvage what I can. It's humbling to admit I can't hold on to everything." Emma listened, recalling his earlier struggles with pride. "Sometimes letting go of certain pieces lets you save the parts that matter most." He nodded slowly. "I've always equated success with total ownership, but I'm starting to see that might be an illusion. If I share some control, maybe I can keep the core of the company intact and still have room for the life I want with Liam." Her chest tightened with empathy and relief. "It sounds like a wise move, even if it's difficult. Have you told Liam anything yet?" Alexander stared at the city lights twinkling beyond the window. "I will. He deserves honesty, but not until I'm sure of the details." He turned back to Emma, expression subdued. "I also want to be sure I don't make empty promises. He's had enough uncertainty lately." Emma nodded, appreciating the caution. "He'll be relieved just knowing you're working toward a real solution, and that you're thinking about him in the process." A rare, genuine smile curved Alexander's lips. "I'm also thinking about you. You've done more than your job, Emma. You've been a stabilizing force here, for Liam and for me." "I won't forget that." Heat rushed to Emma's cheeks. "I'm just doing what feels right. Liam's an incredible kid. You raised him, so I'm sure you have a big part in that." Silence settled, comfortable and reflective, before Alexander spoke again. "I'm planning to finalize the deal in the next week. After that, I want to take Liam somewhere, maybe a weekend trip upstate. Get away from this pressure cooker. Would you be willing to come along, help keep him entertained?" He hesitated, voice lowered as though uncertain. "It could be a chance for us to breathe. All of us." Emma's pulse fluttered. She recalled family vacations from her old jobs, which often meant corralling kids while parents attended to business calls poolside. Yet, something about Alexander's invitation seemed different, more personal. "If you'd like me there," she said gently, "then I'd be honored to join. I think Liam would love it." He looked faintly relieved, as though he hadn't been sure of her answer. "Thank you," he said simply. Then, as though unaccustomed to lingering in gratitude, he rose, extending a hand for her to do the same. "It's late. I won't keep you." Emma stood, her mind whirling with the day's events. Her heart lightened by the realization that Alexander had found a path forward, selling part of his empire but reclaiming space in his life. Perhaps this wasn't just an economic strategy. It felt more like an emotional pivot, one that granted him permission to embrace fatherhood more fully. Before they parted ways for the night, Alexander paused in the hallway, glancing at Emma with quiet resolve. "I know I haven't said it enough, but I'm grateful." The simple words pulsed with sincerity, carrying a weight that couldn't be dismissed. Emma offered a warm smile. "I'm grateful too," she replied, voice soft. In that moment, the penthouse no longer felt cold or impersonal. Instead, it harbored a subtle warmth, a testament that sometimes new paths can open right where old ones seem to dead end. In the midst of finalizing his partial sale deal, Alexander immersed himself in a flurry of paperwork and conference calls. But this time, the difference was palpable. Rather than shutting out everyone, he set clear hours when he'd pause work. He no longer snapped at Liam for asking basic questions. Even Mrs. Henderson seemed astonished by his new demeanor, still brisk, yet oddly considerate of household harmony. One sunny afternoon, the agreement was sealed. Alexander returned to the penthouse, tie loosened, and a subtle air of triumph in his stride. Emma was helping Liam with a puzzle on the living room carpet. At the sight of his father, Liam scrambled to his feet, face lighting up. "Dad, is it done? Are you okay?" Alexander's chest rose with a relieved breath. "Yes," he said, voice deep with emotion. "It's done. I sold part of the company to new investors. We'll keep operating, but with shared ownership." He hesitated, glancing toward Emma before continuing. "And I'm going to have more time to be here." "With you?" Liam let out a small whoop of excitement, grabbing Alexander's hand. For a moment, father and son simply smiled at one another, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. They had weathered the storm, battered but standing strong. Emma stood quietly, a lump forming in her throat. She saw in their eyes what she'd hoped for since day one, a connection anchored in trust. The crisis hadn't vanished overnight, but its crushing weight had lifted. She recalled how distant Alexander had seemed, consumed by an empire he couldn't bear to lose. Now, he stood unburdened, ready to invest in something far more precious, his family. As the evening wore on, Alexander decided on an impromptu celebration in the penthouse's dining room, just a small dinner with Liam, Emma, Mrs. Henderson, and Brian. While everyone insisted on formality at first, the atmosphere soon eased into something warm and genuine. There was quiet chatter, the clink of silverware, and even laughter echoing off the marble floors. Halfway through the meal, Liam raised a paper cup of sparkling cider, cheeks flushed with excitement. "To Dad and Emma," he declared, voice wavering with emotion. "Dad for saving the company, and Emma for saving me when I was lost in the park." Eyes gleaming with tears, he added, "I think she saved us both, really." A hush blanketed the table. Emma fought against tears at Liam's earnest tribute. She couldn't help but recall that fateful day she'd seen a frightened 9-year-old alone on a park bench. She'd never imagined it would lead to this moment, sitting in a millionaire's penthouse, feeling like she belonged. Alexander lifted his own glass in a silent salute to Liam's words. His gaze landed on Emma with unguarded gratitude. She felt her heart flutter, warmth spreading through her chest. After dinner, everyone lingered over dessert, the conversation drifting naturally. Brian recounted some humorous driving mishaps, while Mrs. Henderson reminisced about the years she'd worked in the Collins household. Emma listened, enthralled by how relaxed and open they all seemed. It was as if the tensions that once swirled in every corner of this home had found a softer place to rest. Eventually, Mrs. Henderson and Brian cleared the table, giving father and son a moment alone. Emma stepped out to the expansive balcony, taking in the glittering skyline. She exhaled, overwhelmed by the profound sense of relief and closure. The air felt different, no longer stifled, but rich with possibility. A minute later, Alexander joined her, standing close enough that she could sense his steady presence. "I owe you more than I can express," he said quietly, eyes on the lights winking across Manhattan. "And not just for Liam, for reminding me that human connection is worth more than any corporate triumph." Emma's eyes flickered with emotion. "You owe me nothing," she replied. "I'm just happy for Liam. He was the one who brought me here, really." Alexander turned, his gaze searching her face. In the hush of the night, she sensed the final shift, the completion of a victory that wasn't about contracts or profit margins, but about two people choosing to protect something far more sacred, the love of a family. And in that silent accord, Emma understood this was indeed the most important victory of all. Sunlight poured into the penthouse kitchen as Emma brewed coffee early on a Thursday morning. The rush of crisis had subsided in recent weeks, replaced by a calmer, more harmonious air. Outside, winter's chill lingered, but inside, the warmth between Alexander, Liam, and Emma had turned the once cold residence into a more welcoming home. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Any moment now, Liam would pad in, hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep, to begin their morning ritual. Sure enough, she soon heard soft footsteps. Liam appeared at the threshold, yawning. "Good morning," he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Emma grinned, setting a glass of orange juice in front of him. Since the corporate storm had passed, Liam had been sleeping better, sporting a cheerful demeanor even before breakfast. Moments later, Alexander joined them. He wore a casual button-down shirt, a stark contrast to the suits he used to don daily. He poured coffee into a mug and settled beside his son at the kitchen island. Emma observed how he seemed more at ease, slightly rumpled hair, lighter eyes, an unhurried pace. Liam perked up at his father's arrival. "Dad, are you still coming to my soccer tryouts tomorrow?" he asked, trying to mask his excitement with a casual tone. Since the partial sale of Alexander's company, he'd been able to carve out more personal time. Still, old habits died hard, and Liam sought constant reassurance that his father would stick to his promises. Alexander ruffled Liam's hair. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." He shot Emma a quick, grateful look, one that silently acknowledged how she had guided him to this more balanced life. After breakfast, Alexander helped Liam gather his school things, ensuring he had the right assignments and permission slips. Emma hung back, smiling softly at the sight of them working side by side in the entryway. In the past, she would have been the one to handle all the details. Now father and son seemed to share that small responsibility with genuine closeness. Once Liam left for school, Emma and Alexander reconvened in the living room. She was finalizing the day's schedule, music lessons, a project Liam wanted to do for a friend's birthday, and dinner plans. Alexander sat on the couch, reviewing a few corporate emails on his tablet. "I've got a lighter day at the office," he said, "thinking I might take off early and do something fun with Liam. Maybe the museum." Emma lifted her gaze from the planner. "He'd love that," she agreed, recalling Liam's fascination with dinosaur fossils. "We can invite Brian to drive you, or I can take him, whatever works best." She hesitated, then added, "Or we can all go together if you like." Alexander's eyes flickered with an emotion that seemed part relief, part deeper gratitude. "You wouldn't mind?" he asked. "You deserve your own downtime too." A warmth spread through Emma's chest. She remembered a time when families she worked for wouldn't think twice about whether she might enjoy an outing. They assumed she was just the hired help. "I'd like to come," she replied, "but only if you want me there." He responded without hesitation. "We do." His words lingered, carrying more meaning than just a museum trip. Later that morning, Emma left for the local community center where she still volunteered part-time. On the subway ride, she reflected on how drastically her daily life had changed. Before, she'd juggled inconsistent nanny gigs, uncertain about her place in each new household. Now, she had a steady, fulfilling role, one that felt more like a genuine partnership than a mere job. The fear of being replaced had gradually eased. She sensed Alexander's and Liam's reliance on her wasn't fleeting. By late afternoon, Emma returned, surprised to find Liam already home. He was sprawled on the living room rug, sorting through a bundle of library books. "Dad picked me up early," he said with a grin, "and we went for ice cream. Then he wanted to prep for tomorrow's soccer tryouts, so we kicked a ball around for a bit." His happiness radiated like a small sun. Emma's eyes misted. Moments like these, simple daily rituals, felt like gifts. A sense of peace permeated the penthouse. No urgent phone calls, no missed family moments. She helped Liam pack his gear for soccer, noticing how he chattered about his father's jokes and weekend plans. Yes, life had settled into a new routine, one where Alexander actually participated in the everyday flow, and Liam reveled in the security of his father's presence. Emma realized, with quiet satisfaction, how something so ordinary, breakfast together, after-school pickups, shared jokes could hold extraordinary meaning. And every day, it became clearer that she had become part of this evolving family, forging a path forward in which they all felt they finally belonged. On a crisp Saturday morning, Emma watched from the passenger seat as Brian navigated the streets of Brooklyn. They were taking Liam to see something Emma had mentioned offhand, her old neighborhood. Surprisingly, Alexander had encouraged the trip, claiming it would help him understand where Emma came from. Liam immediately latched onto the idea, excited to glimpse the world Emma often hinted at but rarely described in detail. The car pulled up to a modest row of brownstones. The sidewalks were lined with familiar trees that Emma recalled climbing as a child, though they looked a bit more weathered now. A gentle wave of nostalgia mingled with apprehension in her chest. She glanced over at Alexander, who appeared curious but calm. In the back seat, Liam pressed his face against the window. "It's so different here," he exclaimed, his tone filled with fascination. "It is," Emma agreed softly. As she opened the car door, the brisk November air greeted them. She led them down the block, pointing out small neighborhood landmarks, a family-run bakery, a tiny playground where she used to run around with friends. Alexander seemed keenly interested in everything, asking polite questions, while Liam asked a million more, childlike wonder evident in every step. They stopped in front of an older apartment building, red brick with iron fire escapes. Emma paused, gazing at the chipped paint of the front door. "I lived here until I moved out for college," she explained, her voice catching. Life was simpler, but also tough sometimes. Liam looked up at her, concerned. "Why tough?" She offered a bittersweet smile. "Money was tight, and I worked part-time jobs through high school. But it taught me resilience, I guess." She felt Alexander's gaze on her, a quiet respect in his eyes. He had never pried into her financial background or her upbringing. Now, she appreciated his openness in seeing this part of her story. They wandered a few blocks toward a small diner Emma used to frequent with her mom on rare, special occasions. "Best pancakes in the city," she promised as they entered. The interior was humble, vinyl booths, a chalkboard menu listing daily specials in smeared chalk. But Alexander didn't seem out of place. In fact, he greeted the waitress warmly, surprising Emma with how naturally he shifted into a friendlier mode here. Over a brunch of fluffy pancakes and scrambled eggs, Emma recounted childhood tales, how she and her best friend once tried to bake cookies in a faulty oven, nearly setting off the building's fire alarm, how she biked these streets delivering flyers for a local campaign. Liam giggled at her youthful mischief, while Alexander listened intently, occasionally sending her a small, contemplative smile. At some point, a middle-aged neighbor recognized Emma, greeting her with open arms. "Haven't seen you in ages," the woman exclaimed, eyes darting toward Liam and Alexander. Emma introduced them, explaining she was working for Alexander's family. The neighbor raised a curious brow, but with a kind grin, she welcomed them anyway, reminiscing about how Emma had always been helpful, babysitting local kids or volunteering at the community center. Though the conversation was casual, Emma felt a twinge of vulnerability. She was baring her past, both the modest, sometimes struggling side, to the family she now served. Yet, as she glimpsed Alexander quietly nodding, Liam happily devouring extra syrupy pancakes, she realized she wasn't ashamed. On the contrary, she was proud of how far she'd come. After the meal, they strolled through a small park. Children played on slightly rusted swings. Parents chatted on benches. The atmosphere was lively, sincere, and perhaps less glossy than the enclaves of Manhattan. Alexander took it all in, a soft expression crossing his features. "Thank you for showing us this," he said quietly to Emma. "It's good to remember not everyone lives in a bubble of high-rises and boardrooms." Liam spun around, face flushed from the crisp air. "Can we come back again?" he asked hopefully. Emma's heart squeezed. He was bridging these worlds, wanting to see more of her life. A wave of gratitude washed over her. "Sure," she replied, voice thick with emotion. In that moment, Emma recognized that sharing her past was more than just a tour. It was an invitation to deeper understanding. The father and son at her side represented a new chapter in her life. And by returning to these old streets, she felt an unexpected sense of closure, as if the person she once was and the person she'd become had finally shaken hands. A couple of weeks later, Emma found herself standing on a small stage in a modest corporate auditorium, heart-pounding. She was at a low-key event organized by Alexander's company, an informal gathering to celebrate employees who had gone above and beyond during the recent crisis. After the partial sale and restructuring, Alexander insisted the firm adopt more human-centric values, an approach he'd quietly credited Emma with inspiring. She hadn't expected to speak, yet here she was, microphone in hand, scanning the crowd of 100 or so employees, plus a few familiar faces. Brian, Mrs. Henderson, and even Karen, who had come as Emma's friend for moral support. Alexander stood near the front, Liam beside him, both watching with encouraging smiles. Clearing her throat, Emma began, "I'm not an executive or a shareholder. I'm a nanny, someone who was lucky enough to witness how compassion and everyday kindness can influence even the largest challenges." She paused, cheeks flushing as a hush fell over the room. "I don't have business expertise. But I do know that when people work together and genuinely care about one another, they can overcome crises that seem insurmountable." A smattering of applause followed, and Emma's confidence grew. She recalled the afternoon she'd spent with Alexander, urging him to step back and rethink his approach. "I saw firsthand how solutions can come from unexpected places, like a child's insight or a colleague who suggests an idea no one else considered. Sometimes it's the littlest things that keep us going." Stepping off the stage to more applause, she felt a wave of relief and pride. She caught Alexander's eye, and he gave her a small nod that spoke volumes. Gratitude, respect, and maybe something deeper she couldn't fully define. After the event, a few employees and other guests approached Emma to share their thanks. One middle-aged woman, presumably a manager, said, "Your words touched me. We're not used to hearing speeches about empathy in a corporate setting." Emma smiled, feeling Karen's supportive hand on her shoulder. "It's humbling," she said softly, "but I believe empathy should be at the core of everything, especially when the stakes are high." Karen, beaming, dragged Emma aside to gush about how proud she was. "Look at you, Ms. Public Speaker," she teased. "Didn't think you had it in you to face a crowd, but you did great." Emma blushed, remembering a time she was terrified of stepping beyond her role. Now she felt a stirring sense of purpose. "Thanks for always pushing me to be brave," she replied. A short while later, Emma found Alexander and Liam in a quieter corner of the auditorium near a table with refreshments. Liam was nibbling on a cookie, eyes bright. "That was so cool, Emma," he exclaimed, crumbs dotting his lips. "I didn't know you could talk in front of so many people." She laughed, ruffling his hair. "Neither did I until now." Alexander, leaning against a nearby chair, offered a warm smile. "I meant to thank you for doing that. You helped the staff see how our company isn't just about profits anymore, at least not exclusively." There was a gentleness in his voice, a sort of reverence she wasn't quite used to but appreciated all the same. Emma felt her cheeks grow warm. "I only spoke from the heart," she said. "You're the one making real changes." He shook his head slightly. "I've learned that real change comes when people like you aren't afraid to share their truth. The rest of us catch on eventually." They stood together a moment, a quiet bubble in the midst of mingling employees. Liam looked between them, as though sensing the closeness. Then, with childlike exuberance, he piped up, "Can we go get pizza tonight? To celebrate?" Alexander chuckled, draping an arm lightly around his son's shoulder. "Pizza sounds good. Emma?" he asked, turning to her with a hopeful lilt. She grinned, nodding. "Absolutely. Pizza it is." In that instant, she realized just how far they'd come as a unit, how the boundaries of boss and nanny had blurred into something akin to family ties. Through shared lessons in empathy, struggle, and success, they'd formed a bond that went far beyond a simple work relationship. As they left the auditorium, Emma felt an uplift in her spirit. The steps they'd taken, facing business turmoil, opening up emotionally, forging unexpected friendships, had led them all to a place where they could share their lessons with pride and look to the future without fear. A soft breeze stirred the autumn leaves around Lakewood Park's central walkway where it had all begun. Emma found herself smiling as she strolled alongside Alexander and Liam, recalling the day she'd first spotted a lonely boy on a bench. They'd chosen this spot intentionally to mark a fresh start, free from old fears and brimming with new possibilities. Liam, now taller and more confident at 10, bounced ahead, looking for a prime spot under the oak tree to spread a blanket. He carried a small basketball, insisting they'd find an open court nearby once they finished their little picnic. Emma clutched a woven basket loaded with sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of hot chocolate, courtesy of Mrs. Henderson's meticulous preparation. Alexander carried a light jacket over his arm, scanning the park with a calm expression. They settled on a familiar patch of grass, dappled by sunlight. As Liam rummaged through the basket for snacks, Emma took a moment to observe Alexander. His face held fewer lines of tension, replaced by a contentment she seldom saw in her early days at the penthouse. Their eyes met, and he offered a slow, warm smile, a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd traveled to reach this day. Liam flopped down on the blanket, biting into a peanut butter sandwich. "Remember when you found me here?" he asked Emma, crumbs spraying in his excitement. "I was crying, and you came over even though you didn't know me." Emma laughed gently. "I do remember. You were brave that day, letting a stranger help you." Alexander exhaled, glancing around with nostalgic eyes. "I nearly lost my mind when I realized you were gone," he told Liam. "That moment, finding you safe with Emma, changed everything." He caught Emma's gaze. Who knew one small act could set off a chain of events? Her heart swelled. "It's still surreal for me," she admitted. "I never expected to become part of your lives in such a meaningful way." Liam leaned forward, lips curving into a determined grin. "Can Emma stay forever, Dad?" he asked, tone still playful but laced with sincerity. "I mean, not just as my nanny, but part of us." Silence enveloped them for a beat, punctuated by the distant chatter of other families and the rustle of leaves overhead. Emma felt her cheeks flush, uncertain how to respond. She saw something flicker in Alexander's eyes, a mixture of affection and deep reflection. Instead of sidestepping, Alexander placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. "That's Emma's decision too," he said softly, meeting Emma's gaze. "But I think we both know she's already more than a nanny." Emma's eyes misted. She reached for Liam's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Words caught in her throat, but when she finally spoke, they came out quiet, yet resolute. "I'm not going anywhere." The declaration felt monumental, like crossing a threshold she never knew existed. She realized with clarity that she wanted to remain in their world, not just out of duty, but out of genuine love. Liam whooped in childish delight, scrambling to drag the basketball closer. He urged Emma to join him for a few playful shots at a nearby half-court. She laughed, setting aside the remnants of their picnic, and rose to follow him. As they trotted across the grass, Alexander gathered up the blanket and basket, a contented look settling on his features. In a gentle shift of time, the three of them began dribbling the ball, passing it back and forth. Their laughter echoed across the park. Observers might have assumed they were just another family savoring a day out, unaware of the extraordinary journey that had led them here. Eventually, the sun dipped low, painting the sky with orange and pink hues. They gathered their belongings, strolling back toward the park's entrance. Liam wrapped one arm around Emma's waist, the other around his father's. Alexander cast a final glance over his shoulder at the bench where they'd first met Emma, his face awash in gratitude. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, Emma felt a swell of emotion strong enough to bring tears to her eyes. It was, in many ways, an ending, the close of a tumultuous chapter marked by lost children, corporate crises, and raw self-discovery. But it was also just the beginning of a life enriched by love, trust, and a commitment to stand by each other, no matter what storms might come. They headed home, arms linked, ready to face tomorrow together. And if tears glistened in Emma's eyes, they were tears of pure joy, knowing that she'd found not just a job, but a family in the most unexpected of places. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.